I've kind of happened upon or stolen from other people over the years and gathered and found that they're useful. Or I like them anyway. They get me where I'm trying to go. It's responsive, but we won't necessarily always make that. I'm used to working with spaces that already exist and sort of jamming with them and jamming with the kind of givens that I find. I also work in theatre spaces, but I've kind of developed a particular practice about not working in theatre spaces, which maybe in a year I'll in fact, even this autumn I'm thinking of putting a piece on in a theatre space. It's not always a given. And then last year we made a piece called Board Again. I work with a guy called Matthew Wright, who's a very good friend and a great animator and a visual kind of guy who's been working with me on the company for years. And we made a piece for National Theatre Wales called Board Again, which was involved getting the audience to be people smuggled from Bristol to Newport by a cast which was partly made up of refugee actors, and it was a kind of 3-year collaboration conversation process with the asylum seekers and refugees in Cardiff with National Theatre Wales, and we developed this piece of work, and then we also developed a digital sort of corollary to the piece of work. It was like, came from the question of like, how the fuck can we make live streaming interesting, I suppose. And it also came from the question, which is really interesting, that we were making these kind of bespoke little experiential things, and NTW during the R&D process said to me, we really like this. We can't invest so much money for such small numbers. So you need to think about how more people can see the show. And then that's kind of where we started thinking about the digital world. The digital world became its own completely separate universe where online audiences were able to affect the street show and affect outcomes in the street show. And online audiences were cast as citizen vigilantes for the. We're talking about context of the UK splitting up, Wales being a republic. Everybody wanted to get from Bristol to Wales because it's safer. And the online audience are sort of citizen vigilantes for the Autonomous Republic of Cymru, keeping people out from England. So Bristol becomes a kind of Sangat in our world, and there's lots of TV and some other kind of givens. So we asked the audience to play a particular role online and do particular activities, and then they end up hunting a terrorist. And then they end up deciding what to do with this terrorist. Who's an actual member of the real audience, the street audience, and it's all live. So I'm just going to play this. This is a kind of iteration of the street show. So the street show begins when you get in touch with this website. Basically, the street show starts when you kind of get in touch with the website, and the website looks like a really shit legal immigration practice. So also we were dealing with an aesthetics of what we kind of call bad DVLA aesthetics. So actually working with designers was really interesting because designers like to make things look good. And I was always going, it needs to be shit than that.
You just get the designers who did the DVLA stuff.
Well, in fact, the guy who made the film for us, the recruitment film, which is one of my favourite pieces of the show, actually makes quite a lot of corporate video. He's a mate of mine, and he does really interesting short films and stuff in his own time. To make a living, he works for people like Merthyr Library Service and stuff like that, and so he knows the language so intimately that he really delivered beautifully. So this is the street show. I'm just going to let that run. I've also made a bunch of shows with a bit of name. I've done a little bit of stuff with Forest Fringe, bits of bits here and there. So I kind of, I always like to do shit I've not done before, which is good and bad. So I'm just going to let this run. This is a sort of a vaguely chronological through the scenes of the piece. That guy's selling you a passport, this guy's telling you how to get across the border. In the back of his van you've got a long X-ray, or you haven't, you're just going to gain things that you have to pick up along the way to try and convince the border guards. There's a taxi driver who picked some people up and not other people up. I think it was about 28 separate audience journeys within the piece. Permutations of, there's the Welsh Border Agency, that's the Welsh Border Agency. inside. That's an accent test, testing whether you've really got Berry accent. Everyone's with Berry. That's where the terrorist gets interviewed. That's the interrogation protocol. That's somewhere when you finally escape in Wales, you meet this Nigerian guy who was sort of a trafficker, and this is the third act, which is basically a conversation and a bottle of soup with people for whom everything we're pretending to do is real. So these guys are asylum seekers from Syria and Trail or whatever, and they're just sitting there acting. And it's called the safe house. So the third act is a kind of an anti-theatrical decompression experience.
Just south of the border where they are.
In Wales, yeah. In safety. So that's that. And the Welsh border guard spoke Welsh to you, of course, as they would, and then translated a bit to English, but there was always the kind of, sort of sense of being outside the language comfort zone. We're often trying to play that exact thing. There you go, this is the online campaign, so there was these massive posters that looked like they might be real, we thought. So people did kind of think they were real. That's in North Wales, and that appeared on a news website. And it's going to end up in the National Museum, I think. But this was the recruitment drive online. There's a video of this guy, Alan Trevor, and this is the sort of game, which is the live shift. And what you're watching there is the live feed from audience who've been caught and made to be mobs working for the border agency. And then they're receiving instructions from the online players. And then these are the online players doing the chat, So this was really interesting. Watching an asylum interview, they've got tasks that change. Threat level, a terrorist interview, and then the online audience decide what to do with this terrorist. Who's a punter?
How long did this text develop?
About 3 years.
Yeah.
And if you're online, are you also a punter?
Yeah. It's free online, but you've got. What we did is we cast the audience very differently. So we cast the street audience and the online audience as kind of protagonist and antagonist. So, in a sense,
two different groups.
Completely different. Some people did both and enjoyed doing both. They have different agendas. Anyway, so that's that. That's a bit boring game, blah, blah, blah.
How many was the playing audience would you have at the time?
Online?
No.
Street audience. What was it? It was, it was 2 lots of 24. So we did 2 trains a night. So this involves a train journey, this show. And so we did 2 lots of 24, which was 3 van loads, 8 per van, per train, so 48.
So this was just like regular trains that you...
Yeah, with regular commuters on them. So that's a bit of that. That's what I did. In terms of people who make it happen. So I'm just going to show you, I'm going to talk a little bit about practice. I'm just going to talk for a bit and then we'll do stuff. I think it's probably best. Bear with me, I've got little kids that keep me awake. How old are they? 4 months.
You've got 2 at 4 months?
Yeah. They don't sleep much. They do I? No. You don't really. So it's...
You're doing very well.
Thank you. So, I had this last time I gave a talk, because slow down. Innovation in art. I always kind of come back to so we're kind of working with new materials, aren't we? A lot of I mean, talking about digital and all that. We think we kind of make a new romance and all that as well. So it was a good reflection for me to go back to other kinds of innovation. Giotto there with his I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to use I'm going to make the character slightly more human in scale. But the thing that he does with great mastery is sticks to telling the story that we want to hear. In fact, which obviously for his audience was that's St. Francis, isn't it? So my interests and approach are kind of based in journalism, but I don't really. It's hard to define your work, but anyway, I'm going to try. So there's a slightly journalistic sort of historical interest that I have, which kind of is partly from an interest in history, but also history as kind of history that somebody like Gilbert Heron, or kind of African American artist making hip hop, would kind of go, no, we need to understand history in order to understand the present. I think that's what kind of got me into it, was in fact Gilbert Heron, who is a bit of a hero of mine in terms of thinking about how to make art that makes you think and you can still dance to somehow, you know, like really feel in that sense, and kind of makes you whole and makes you feel healed. That would be the ultimate aim. To make a show that felt as good as a Gilbert Heron song would be my absolute aim in life. And I've been a DJ for over 20 years, so I love music. I like messing around with perceptions of what is real and what is not real. So with the border game, we were using a real border, we were using real people's experiences that were kind of in the show, in the back of the van. There's this, you're all pretending to be asylum seekers, except there's one guy there who's from Eritrea. He's just sitting there and he gives you dates. He doesn't say anything in English, he just speaks in Tigrinya.
He feeds you dates.
Yeah, he just offers you a date and you get in the back of the van, and then this nasty English guy comes in and deals with the pigs. So it might have been a Syrian guy, because there was a couple of different guys on the roadside. And occasionally they freestyle and kind of did other things that we hadn't initially, you know, so you may have on the night you went like done something completely different, but you know, that was his right as well. As a volunteer and a person who, and if you did get me to the Eritrean guy, you got a status last 2 weeks ago, which was great.
No.
We all wrote that to support, and he managed to get to stay, which was a really positive outcome for me from the show. I was asked to talk at an immersion talk recently, you know, what is immersion, we're doing all this Oculus Rift business and blah, 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 blah. And I was presenting the actual point of view. And my response was that, as far as I'm concerned, the primary tool that I would use for immersing people as the audience is the mind. And I think that's really good for us to keep hold of as a thought, because like a novel is totally immersive. So when you read a good novel and you're into it, or watching a TV show or whatever, you know, something that you're into is immersive. And what that sort of also does is lets us off the hook a bit, because we feel like maybe we're making new stuff and there's no roadmap and there's no grammar and there's no da-da-da, but actually there is. It's the same roadmap we use for everything, because the questions that we need to ask ourselves, the fundamental questions are the same fundamental questions, like, why are we doing this? Who's it for? What do we want to make them feel like? What's the story? Yeah, is it any good? Yeah.
Because I think that's
Yeah.
really the
Yeah.
question. Seems to have it really brilliant on paper,
Yeah.
and if it's not any good, you will not immerse.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all those kind of, that's the kind of big wide zooms, and you can also use the little ones as well, like, okay, what are the stakes here? What's the rhythm in this scene? You know, what does this character want? What is the arc of this beat? You know, all of that stuff still applies, regardless of our, we use Facebook now, so we don't really think about that, or, you know, whatever. So it's a good thought, because it kind of gives you a lot of peace. You already know how to do it. You know, it's already there. It's a bit like Giotto there, kind of going, I really respect it, hang on, we're still doing safe time, isn't it? It's got to feel like God, angels and stuff. So, and I think it's a good question to ask yourself, because your answers can be whatever they are, because you can be doing this because you want to make cash, or because you want to entertain people, or because you want to provoke a debate about migration, or because you want to make people feel dirty because they press the execute button, whatever it is. You need to know why it is. And I don't apply any judgment whether you want to do it for this reason, or this reason, or this reason. As long as you know what your reason is, you'll make better work. So yeah, and just coming back to what I said earlier, the board game digital world, which became a really important thing for us. Initially came out of a very practical question from John McGrath and the producer saying, I can't fund this show for that few people. Make it more accessible somehow. And then there was like a 2-year resolution to the problem. So that's what's the same, I suppose. That's not making anything. In my view.
So, 5.
Cool. So what are the differences in making interactive and immersive and located work? And that's the other side of it. Where agency is a big one, I think. Giving an audience person agency changes a whole lot of shit. You never know what they're going to do. You don't control them. So you need to be very much building your strategy about making your work to respond to that agency. And also, I would, agency just because is not enough. Their actions have to mean something in the world. Their choices have to mean something in the world. I'd rather have less choice with more resonance than have loads of interactivity that didn't really take me any further into the story or any stronger into a relationship with the story. And with located work, one of your big problems is you're not in control, which is also one of your big, it's one of the big joys of the fact that you're not in control, so you've got to be ready to not be in control of piss people on a Friday night, or trains doors not opening all night, or all sorts of
When
different
you're
things.
saying located work, you mean being on the street?
Yeah, site-specific kind of work. I mean, there's all sorts of ways of calling it. Yeah. So you have some controlled spaces and some not controlled spaces. We were very clear about in the back of a van we've got a controlled space, so we can do a little scene. We can go. And then the first scene is like on the street, and you're with somebody, and you don't know who's going to walk past. One of my actors had a big thing with the police one night, just before they went to come down. All sorts of things can happen there. So when I'm making a kind of located piece, a site-specific piece, I throw out a bunch of questions, classic questions for me. Everything, some people think is a bit more simple because you don't have to do with the theatre, but it's a lot more complicated, in fact, in terms of logistics and in terms of making things kind of function in spaces we don't control. There's still sorts of shit like licensing that you have to deal with and permissions and who owns what land and where you can film and where you can't film, whether you can film and record it or whether you can only film and stream live. There are a lot of complicated conversations and you may not have to have them, but someone will have to have them. I'd always ask what is already there and who is already there. So in the sense of border game, there were already a bunch of asylum seekers in Cardiff, so we tapped into that as a reality. There's already a real border. There's already a train station. There's already a train. There's a bunch of people on the train who are going home from work who don't know about this show that's happening. And I was really interested in that kind of third audience. The guerrilla audience, if you like, the audience of the guerrilla piece. Drinkers, pool players. I've made work in Caribbean restaurants before where the owners have said we made a ska musical in a Caribbean restaurant. Yeah, you can do that. I've got regulars that will play pool, so they're going to have to come in and play pool. Because they come every week, all year, and you're here in a few weeks. So we had to have the regulars, which was about a dozen guys who were the real regulars, allowed to come in during the show and carry on playing pool.
Is this still in border games?
No, this is in another. Sorry, I went too quick.
No,
we made a ska musical
Excellent.
in a Caribbean restaurant.
Right. Okay,
In
now
Cardiff, and it was about growing up in Cardiff and ska music, and it was set in the 80s. And in fact, it was very much connected to that place because the guy who wrote the original text was telling us stories about when he was growing up. And he's a guy who has a white Welsh mother and a Jamaican minor father, and grew up in Cardiff and felt that ska music was kind of something that represented him. But the brilliant thing was we were rehearsing in this venue. And he was like, oh, that's Blam, that guy over there. He used to work on the door at the Blues that I'm talking about. So the connectedness to the story was very much kind of present in it. So we'll move on. Who's already there, what's already there? The audience, that's the other thing you've got to think about. We tend to cast the audience. We don't have to do that, but it kind of helps make their experience make sense, I guess. We did a piece called My Life in CIA, which was about Paris 70s CIA spy business going around town, following the characters, spying on the characters. And the audience in that were kind of tourists, because there's a whole bunch of reference to tourism. It was an adaptation of a novel. So Yeah, they don't have to do anything. We make it always like really easy for them to be successful, but we kind of make them tourists very quickly. So we like at the beginning of the show was like, welcome to this talk about it was about travel dyslexia and palindromic departure times, which is kind of something from the novel. So this mad guy is kind of going on about, you know, if you've got travel stress dyslexia, you just need to go up 12:21 because it reads the same backwards. Anyway, it's part of the novel. And then you say, like, come with me on this walking tour of Paris, and then off they go around Cardiff, and you point to a bunch of pissheads and you talk about the fact that, you know, they're obviously in the cafe on the floor and they're obviously discussing
Is
stuff.
that connected? Sorry, I'm going completely off, but just a quick question. Is that connected in any way to something I'm reading about at the moment, which is that whole DRIFT15 movement, which was in Paris in the 20s? Which was artists coming from the literary tradition of psychogeographic work.
It probably will be connected to that stuff, yeah, because it came out of the Oulipo, which was a later movement in Paris, the Nouveau Literature Potential, and it was written by the only American member of that movement, Harry Matthews. It was written as a retrospective biography of what happened when he was in Paris. That's totally true, actually, but maybe some of it is. So again, you know, reality and non-reality was very interesting to me. And just something we discovered with that is that with immersion, sometimes, you know, going back to the mind of the audience, the most fun thing to say was to the audience, here we are in Paris, and obviously from my accent you can see I'm an American. You know, and they're doing all the work. And once they've done all the work, they're there. They're much more there than us trying to make Cardiff look like Paris. In fact, they enjoy the conceit of like, the game. So yes, something I was telling actors who hadn't worked in this way in board game was that the audience is a bad improv partner. We just have to remember that. The audience is a bad improv partner who's always right. So whatever, we used to do this, I used to do this exercise with them, you know, like when you do really bad improv partner exercise, I've ever done that. Where you kind of go, oh, look at my, you know, you're stroking a horse and you say, oh, isn't she lovely, this horse? And the improv partner says, there's no fucking horse there. And then what do? You go, oh my god, yeah. I don't know what happened for breakfast this morning, but I'm tripping out. You know? You have to make them right all the time, just jump on making them right. But it's a good exercise if you're working it that way to do that kind of anti-improv and get used to that. I rehearse different kinds of audience member with actors, so usually with the other actors being as audience members, we make a lot of more than one scenes. So we've got 5 or 6 actors, so instead of the other 5 actors kind of drinking tea and talking about what's on the telly, they'd be the 5 audience for the one actor doing the scene. And one has a task of being a really sort of eager audience member. You're the one who doesn't understand what the hell's going on. You're the one who wants to break the rules. And that way we kind of get the muscles going and kind of get better at dealing with all the things that may happen. One of our actors, there was a bit of a kind of kidnap scene in all the game one night. So I don't know kidnapping all the guys. That was interesting. And another one, a really amazing one, and I read this because my baby had just been born and the show was like 2 weeks in, and I read it on the show notes and I thought, yes, they've got it, because we kind of made a software rather than a show for the actors and the technicians who were there to kind of run and respond to what the input of the audience was.
Internet audience.
Huh?
Internet audience.
Both audiences, both simultaneous audiences. In the sense that like the show, I feel like the show is a software with clear kind of beats and stuff, but it always is kind of moving and responding to the inputs. And so I read the show report this night and it was like, so somebody asked for their asylum interview in Arabic. So someone at that point had the presence of mind to phone up Thea, one of the actors from scene 1 who currently was off, and say, Thea, can you do the Arabic translation for us, please? And they got him online for the audience member, so that the audience member was able to have that asylum interview in Arabic. And then he was like, oh, I don't speak that in Arabic, really. Can I have it in Somali? He's a Somali guy. So they call up the other actor, who is a Somali guy. It's like,
But they don't really start to regret saying it.
yeah, well, you know, in a way,
No,
like,
really,
I was so
Somali.
overjoyed to read that on the show notes. I thought, well, the technicians, they kind of relax now, you know, they kind of know what the game is here. Because often you'll be working with people from kind of more traditional backgrounds who kind of like, they know how to run a show, but they're not sure about this other stuff. So boom, boom, boom. So that's the audience. The audience can do anything. Kidnap your actors, get really pissed. The Somali incident. There was another incident in my life in CIA where we had one scene for a couple of nights was in the strip club because we lost the venue, they played, and then we switched to a strip club, which hadn't been opened. So it's like we went in at 9 and it was opening at 10. They were quite straightforward about it. As long as we paid enough cash, they were fine for us to do it. You know, they didn't have any kind of artistic problems with us. But we'd given all the audience chalk, and they were kind of walking around Cardiff, chalk in their little group signs. So some had a cannon, and some had it was a banana or whatever. So a couple of the audience members started chalking inside the street. And James, my colleague who was directing that, because I was working as a producer and performer on that one, he nearly got his legs broken. Because of course, you know, the guys running the street club are kind of gangsters. So you're like, okay, so if you give people permission to do stuff, you don't know what they're going to do. But you kind of got to be in some way ready for that joyousness and difficulty. So boom, boom, boom. The space is a character, you need to know that. The audience is a bunch of characters. The audience is often the protagonist, depending on how you see it, can be, right, and varies. You need to rehearse the venue, like rehearse all the staff to know who the fuck you are and why what happens there. And also, in a sense, rehearse all the different days of the week. So you'll find actually that doing outdoor work on a Friday night is completely different from on Tuesday night or Saturday afternoon. There's different things that go on. You kind of need to get used to all that as well. So and then embrace the obstacles. That's kind of obvious all for us. When you've got to have guys playing pool in the middle of the show, you've got to make it part of the show, you know. And when you've got to have, we did another thing, hard darts in the nightclub, 3 floors, and there was this one scene which took place on the stairs, but actually the chef sometimes had to come through and get a bag of frozen peas or frozen chips, you know. So we just had to make it part of the scene, if it happened and when it happened. So, platforms. How do we do it? Not too bad. Platforms and other forms. I'm going to let some of these pictures run actually. We'll give you some pictures of the. That's coming in a minute. What's different about the digital stuff, or multi-platform, or you call it transmedia? It's a nice term.
Well, I don't personally, but
You use the term transmedia.
yeah, I came up with that term last night. I just woke up with
When we were at the Birmingham workshop, we used it, and we were like, oh yeah, you did bring it up.
Yeah, that's the first time I heard this term. I thought it was interesting.
I raised it because in a
used term.
yeah, but in our field,
I don't know why
yeah.
we have to call things transmedia. And I was like, what? What a weird thing to say at a BBC digital workshop. Anyway, moving along.
So, I get, if I'm going to ask like what's particular about that kind of stuff, so it's particular that there's often many stories, or there's often many people, or simultaneous information streams. There's also many distractions, so if you've got somebody consuming your story on their own mobile phone, they're going to get a text from their mum, or they're going to get, you know, they're going to get a call or a Facebook notification, or they're going to check Twitter. So you just have to kind of be ready for that. One of the things we did in board games is swap phones, and tell people to turn their phones off within the story, you know, because they're going to get tracked. And we gave them practice. What does a GoPro do then? Okay, well, where's this interesting? That'll be more of a technical expression. Or I might really want to be telling a story about my son's obsession with looking at his fingers, and I'll have to think, okay, how do I do that? So it can come either way. I'm always looking for the rupture and the disruption, either in public space, either in the media itself. I find it interesting looking at 360 panoramas and finding the bit where they don't match. But that's me, you know, that's just something that I'm aesthetically and artistically interested in. What's the nature of the relationship through this technology? So I think that's a big one, really. What's our relationship with the tech, and what's our relationship with each other through the tech? So So if I think of questions like distance and proximity, so on the internet we're kind of separate from each other, but we're all joined together. Whereas in the sort of traditional theatre context, we're perhaps all sat together in the same room. But yeah, theatre is kind of shared experience here and now, isn't it? And our digital experiences are a little bit more, I'm going to share an edited version of what I just did, or something like that, or I might be chatting online. It's just different kind of types of sharing occur. Or we can have a more theatrical sharing of that, so we can all watch the feed together. So maybe 10 people in a room watching the feed, or, you know, they're questions to ask yourself. Do you want to be individual? With the headphones, with your piece earlier, is really nice. It's quite personal to me, but also I'm in a group. So that's an interesting kind of combination of those things. Online is dislocated, it's global, blah blah blah.
But like massive players, what they call it?
Multi-online,
that acronym,
Yeah.
That's quite a significant way of joining mass people
Yeah.
on one purpose,
Yeah.
or really immersed in the same.
But they're still kind of individually located, aren't they?
Yeah, and really separate physically.
Yeah. So I think that's a real rich area of investigation making. This was in here because I realised that a lot of board games about telling stories through objects, through this is a flyer given on a platform about, you know, the breakup of the UK and let's get the UK back together sort of thing. There was ID cards, there was Welsh money, there was all sorts of objects that the audience would have, like there was another flyer. We had different flyers depending on how late the trains were, so the story would develop. One of them had a phone line on it, you could phone, and then there was kind of little hidden stories on the phone. There you go, that was the classic one, Ken, splitting quizzes and epidemics. There you go, X-ray, these are the objects. That's another object, and there's quite a lot of information there. Just a bit of a poster. Saves the actors a lot of work. But also kind of tells the story very, very clearly. That's another object which tells the story, I suppose, the menu on there. You go back, our audience had to clean off this graffiti when they ended up in there. Coming up with so yes, and then, okay, how do we interrogate grammar? How do we interrogate, I want to really whiz through because I want to get on and do stuff. I'd encourage you to look at different kinds of grammar, different kinds of work that interests you. So the grammar of film, for example, we all think we know what that is, but if you look at something like Légèreté, do you ever know that film? Mm-hmm. I'll give you 2 minutes of it later. It's a completely different grammar of film. Mm-hmm. And so what is the grammar of these new media? So there's the Twitter is the characters, or the Facebook world that you need to interrogate. But because it's not massively used for performance yet, we also have a chance to invent it in the same way that you know, the early users of film kind of were really like, wow, what does this do? You know. So yes, here's some examples of what I think is really interesting digital work. This is a piece called Domestic Tension by a guy called Buffer Bilal. All subtitled How to Shoot an Iraqi. And he stayed in a flat for a couple of weeks, and you can point this gun at him and shoot him, or you can point the gun away from him and stop someone else shooting him. So in terms of like using all that online pointy shooty, I'm on my own somewhere, someone else is somewhere, kind of getting it, but making it in a real context. This is in New York during the, I think it was the first Gulf War he developed this piece, or maybe the second, but anyway, there was Americans bombing Iraq, and he made this piece. It's a painting. Right?
Here's online players, they know these rooms.
Yeah, I can see him, yeah. It's kind of an amazing piece of work. Not a bug splat. Distance and proximity again. These guys worked out that drone pilots sitting in a bunker in Texas or wherever, dropping bombs in Pakistan or whatever with their remote control thing, and they never really have to face their victim. So they made massive photos of people who think I'm not sure whether it's people who live there or people who've been killed, so that the pilots have to look into the eyes of the person they, you know, kind of at least metaphorically speaking, look into the eyes of the person they're shooting or killing, which is something like we played a lot with the board game. You know, people felt really comfortable to execute someone they're just looking at on the screen, whereas they probably wouldn't have felt so comfortable to make that vote in person with the person there. And I think that's very much part of our world now, that one decisions are taken at a distance through online shit. Online shit, that's a technical term. That's just me being really anal about planning. We have to do all that kind of stuff before we map the journey in different ways. So, do you know this thing? Cutiman or Cutiman, I'm not sure how you say it. People know this guy? He's quite old now. It felt like a really amazing example of what YouTube could do. This guy got thousands and thousands of people's little music videos and cut them into a tune. But all the people are still represented in this video. So it sort of represents an amazing act of curation.
Yeah.
Democraticness of YouTube, making a beautiful piece of art. She's just singing in her bedroom on her own, and then suddenly she's gone from being seen by 200 of her mates to being seen by 7 million people. Started, he was real just like a cutter and paster, you know, bedroom DJ himself in a sense, and then kind of blew up. It's so fucking good.
This is something like the virtual choir, isn't it? It's a similar sort of medium, is it?
Don't know that.
What's his name? Choral conductor who got 1 million voices to sing last year. Or, resonates with me in the same way, yeah. They all sang the same parts and then turn it into
a composite video.
Yeah, a million voice. All you did in your bedroom was do a 2-minute part.
Yeah. It's great. It's one thing. There's one later when you kind of see everybody. I might be another one. Anyway, there you go, you start seeing kind of composite screens, blah blah blah. Just a good example of someone who's gone, what does this medium do? Like, what does it really do? What does it represent? How can I do, you know, something that kind of feels relevant to the medium? Because it still feels like I'm watching a kind of piece of YouTube, like I would watch any other piece of YouTube, but it's like the whole of YouTube, all curated into this beautiful kind of moment for me. So yeah, I'm going to move on pretty soon. Lagette I talked about earlier. I'll give you a little bit of that because I think it's an amazing example of just playing around the camera for 25 minutes long. But has anybody seen 12 Monkeys?
Yes.
12 Monkeys nicked this storyline. 12 Monkeys is based on
Only later did you realize that he had seen a man die.
I thought 12 Monkeys was a novel. It's based on a novel.
I thought it was based on
And soon afterwards, the house was blown up.
Who's the virus?
Chris Marker. Basically, really bloody good storytelling. It's all black and white pictures. No moving image at all. I think he didn't even want to, but I couldn't get to it. Did you see it? Because he had to get it all. Anyway, you get the idea. This is amazing. Loads of silence.
So it's just pictures, not movement at all.
Yeah, they kind of wobble.
Okay.
Have a watch. When you got a bit of time. Another really interesting example that makes me think of as well is a game called Papa Sangre. I don't know if you've ever played that, which is binaural audio on a kind of smartphone. There's kind of all pure audio storytelling. There's a little bit of thing that you do with your hands. You walk through the space, and that's it. So it's kind of a non-visual game, but it's really rich.
It's scary.
Yeah, it's well scary. Your face eaten by like a wolf or something. So I'm just going to quickly talk about the fact that to use the latest shit, which is great. Oh, this is about distance of proximity. Sorry, this is my life in CIA. So we had scenes like that far away from the audience, but they could hear like a 1970s tape survey of the system on the top of the car park. And then this is another scene, again, just like this guy's in the audience. And this is the actress, and she's dumping him. But everyone else in the audience in that little group is watching. So they've gone from like looking at people over in the car park over there to this other scene where like he's come in and she's just picked the first guy who comes in and got him to sit down and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's over." And basically dumped him really nicely. With all the rest of the audience there. That's fourth floor balcony looking down. So we used in-ear stuff, mic'd up the actors, gave all the audience binoculars if they wanted it. So, but we had single earpieces, quite 70s tech walkie-talkies. So it felt like it was still in the 1970s. That's when the story was set, and that's what they were watching. So there's a bit of a bag exchange here. And that's the kind of view of the audience. But this guy's mic'd, and the woman who comes in the red dress is mic'd. Cool, thank you. Another example of something we used in my life at CIA was we used those massive screens in the middle of town. It was an airport departure lounge. So it was this airport moment. So just find the tech that makes the story alive, because it was in a big open public plaza. That same plaza you've just seen the aerial view of. We managed to get this, like 20 feet across the town. And it kind of accelerated. That's all that shit. She's craving you see people in the street going, what the fuck is going on in Cardiff tonight? And there's a French voiceover.
I think this is like one of my favourite things. Just don't have to do anything and the person's transported just by looking at them. And so romantic, super stuff of films always set in train stations, people leaving departures, that's fictional just in itself.
It's about 15 minutes of that, so this is when the audience come through, so there's a new little bit of treat. I like the personal joke from that, because we used to do something. Do you?
I'm just kidding.
You're allowed to hate it. It's about 5 seconds of content. Appropriate content. Appropriate technology. This is a piece I did with learning disabled actors. The radio with the speech on, and he walked up and down with it, and that was a scene, recording it. And then in the background, you just got classified record decks, because one of the others had a fancy about being a DJ, so I taught him a little bit how to DJ, and he DJed. So that felt like the right thing to do for that group of individuals, and that was all based on the kind of Dole office queuing system structuring of these relevant to public sector services. Ding dong. That was the technology we used in the Sky Musical. A dance set and Bob Marley record and Love Band. So I felt right for that. And that was the board again. That was the kind of, that was the relevant mobile phone to talk about migration or the improvement type of mobile phone. And there you go. People have no problem choosing execute because they don't know anything.
Yeah.
So, there you go. That's some shit I've done. Let's make some shit. Yeah, a couple of other things. I'm always interested in the glitch. I think especially in digital work, it's really easy to try and make things perfect. I think it's not interesting for people like that. You know, it's too easy for us to make things kind of perfect because we can go and revisit and reiterate all the time. I'm always interested where it breaks and where it's a bit edgy, where it kind of falls apart and there's gaps and holes and stuff like that. And you always need to get to work out which bits of your technology are robust. So sometimes the latest things are really cool, but not in that environment where they're not robust enough to use it that way yet. So spend a long time on your R&Ds, just seeing what works and enjoying what doesn't as well.
Have a really ignorant R&D.
Research and development period. So if you're going to make a piece of work that's quite tech heavy, you probably want to spend at least a week on just jamming with tech. A long time before you kind of make that work, so that you can choose whether you're going to use a GoPro, whether you're going to use the surveillance cameras, whether you're going to use X and Y and Z, you know, what kind of platforms you're going to do. And don't forget to use what you already know. So we had this really big problem in Board Again, because we were using Twilio to send out millions of texts to different mobile phones, and they had to be different stories and da-da-da. We had to know where the train was. We were trying to follow the train online with big GPS and stuff, and then suddenly we went, fuck me, there's a stage manager on the train. They can queue it. They spent, you know, they're like really good at queuing. That's what they know how to do really well. So all they did is they phoned up the office where the kind of back end was being run and said, just leaving so-and-so station. Well, I can't remember which one it was. We're just leaving. Oh, cool. We send that text out then. It says something relevant to just leave it there. Cool. Have fun. Right, let's make some stuff.